Hi guys, the news of new strikes will no doubt be a blow to the Labour government. They had perhaps believed they would be able to avoid a lot of industrial action by providing workers with decent pay. However, as we know, not all striking is related to wages. Some of it is down to contracts or working conditions, which is more difficult to resolve as a problem. But with the Tories no longer able to pick fights with trade unions for ideological reasons, it's left to the right-wing media to battle the unions on their behalf. And when I say battle, I mean lie and misrepresent their strikes and their positions. Here political commentator Matthew Stadlen explained why avoiding the strikes is so important.
What do you say to that?
I accept, to start with, that there is a risk, and I hope it's a small risk, that this could spiral out of control with a domino effect, and no one wants that. Ultimately, we all want the same thing, I hope, which is a prosperous country where, whether you're a train driver or you're working in the private sector, whatever it is, and of course Labour are renationalising the railways, aren't they, you get a decent wage. Just to give you a very small personal example, I had to do some bits and bobs, relatively low-level work on my car this week. I was expecting a bill of around £500 maybe, which would have been tough.
Bentley playing up again, is it?
It's a VW Golf, other models are available. £1,777. There are, I suggest, millions of people in the country who would really struggle to pay that sort of one-off bill. So the cost of living is enormous. And we can all point the finger at train drivers or whoever it is we want to point the finger at and say, well, they're paid pretty well, aren't they? What about us? But people are really, across the board, I think, struggling to make ends meet. Now, the alternative to doing a deal with the train drivers, as Labour seems to have done this week, although I think they've got to still vote on it, and unfortunately there are going to be further strikes later this week.
Over the conditions rather than the pay.
Yeah, and I accept that this is awkward, to say the least, in terms of headlines for Labour's Transport Secretary. But the alternative to getting your hands dirty and doing a deal is that millions of rail passengers, whether they're commuting to work, whether they're going to birthday parties, funerals, whatever it is, shopping in the centre of towns across the country, they will be negatively impacted, so they will hate it. And also, there's a massive hit to the economy if you allow train strikes to roll on and on and on, as the Conservatives did.
Of course, but we now have...
And he's completely correct. See, the Conservatives were happy to see strikes go on. They were happy to see industrial action because they were able to engage in this ideological battle with the trade unions. They were happy to see these strikes because they would turn around and say, well, it's nothing to do with us. It's it's Mick Lynch or it's the head of whatever organisation that represents workers. That's the problem, not us. We're trying to negotiate with them, but they're not willing to negotiate. They're demanding too much. The country can't afford it. All lies, but designed to make the public angry at the workers, angry at the trade unions. Now, the Tories are gone, so they can't do this anymore. So instead, as I pointed out, this falls to the right-wing media. What is the goal of the right-wing media? To try and destroy the unions. Why would the media care about destroying the unions? Because when ordinary people see the trade unions succeeding, they think to themselves, well, maybe I should be part of a trade union. And the right-wing media want to avoid that at all costs because they know that people in the public sector may be a part of a trade union and they're benefiting from being a part of a trade union. The last thing they want to see is people in the private sector organise trade unions as well and demand more. Because the people who are in charge of the right-wing media want to avoid paying taxes. They want to avoid workers getting more. They want to engage in a race to the bottom. Pay their staff as less as possible, reduce their protections, reduce their working conditions if possible. It's about, as I said, a race to the bottom. And if people are organised in a trade union, they can demand better conditions and better pay. And this is the opposite of what the richest in society want. Remember, these channels like GB News, Talk TV, they're not there to provide information, to provide news. It's about pushing a narrative. The richest in society deserve to be the richest and they need more. They're never satisfied, but they always need more and deserve more. And more comes at the cost. Comes at the cost of the state, or it comes at a cost to workers. And in order to protect workers, you need trade unions. So the battle against trade unions at the moment, of course, is taking place at the public sector level. But of course, the ultimate goal is to stop people in the private sector becoming members of a trade union. So you're going to hear this ideological battle going forward, not from the Tories, of course, so much because they're out of power, but from the right-wing media. How the unions are a disaster, how they're costing taxpayers huge amounts of money, how they're not really protecting workers, how they're more interested in going backwards than going forwards. All this negative rhetoric is designed to convince not so much people in the public sector, but people in the private sector not to join a trade union. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.